there, didn't see you. I'm Jacob from Trees Atlanta, out at the glorious Alpaca Treehouse Farm, owned by Kara O'Brien. Big shout out to her for letting us film here. And I'm going to teach you how to plant a tree. Planting a tree the right way is one of the best things you can do to ensure a tree survives into maturity. It's winter right now, and you really want to plant your trees in the fall and winter to give them the best chance of survival. The reasoning behind that is that trees are dormant in the fall and winter, meaning they'll have less need for sunlight, for nutrients, for water. We've got our tree, we've got our clothing, next you need your tools. So first things first, you're going to need a shovel because you are digging a hole. So I've got my shovel here. If it's one person, one shovel, but if you have more people helping you, and the more the merrier, then one shovel per person. I've got my pickmatic. You could also use a Pulaski or pickaxe, something that's going to help you break through tough clay, rocks, concrete, whatever construction debris might be buried underground. And you're also going to need hand cultivators. Now I've got two different models. I got this claw model, kind of like a hand rake, and I've got this more mattock type design. This is the one I prefer, but whatever you have available or whatever is in the store would be fine. What you really want to look for is these prongs like this. In addition to these hand tools, you're also going to need a couple other things to help you. It really helps to have some empty gardening buckets. These are 15-gallon buckets. We're going to use those to put the soil in as we dig. Keeps things neat, and it helps us when we have to backfill. You're going to need some mulch. So we've got two 15-gallon buckets of mulch. Each of them fill it about 2/3 of the way. And I also have some water buckets, which we're going to use at the end. Both of these are just 5-gallon buckets. You can pick them up from any hardware store. All right, we've got our tools, we got our tree, we got the appropriate clothing. We're good to go. We're ready to start planting. As far as how wide your hole should be, you want to aim for twice as wide as the pot that this tree came in from the nursery. Now, maybe you don't have a tape measure with you. That's okay. Just use what you have on hand. I have my shovel, and I know from experience that the length of the shovel handle is going to be about twice as wide as a 15-gallon bucket. That, 1, 2, there we go. So I'm going to set this down. And I've got my whole perimeter. I'm just going to score that out. Now at this point, it's important to take note of anything that is covering the ground, be it pine straw, pine cones, wood chips, rocks, gravel, grass, and you want to scrape that out of the way. Now it's pretty easy for me to do that right now, but if there was grass on this slope, for instance, if I was in someone's front yard, you just want to come in at a low angle like that, scrape that top layer of grass off. Everything that comes out of the ground, from on top of the ground, from the tree pot, all of that is going to get reused in some way before we're finished. Now on to the digging itself. And as I'm digging, I'm careful to maintain a cereal bowl shape to this hole. It means sloping shallow angles, flat on the bottom. So as you're digging, just remember, cereal bowl. So I get asked a lot, Jacob, how do I know my hole is deep enough? And the answer is you're really not going to know until you take your tree out of its pot and loosen up its root ball. Now, I'm going to show you what I mean. So when a tree grows in these pots at the nursery, it's in these pots for years and years, getting transferred from a 1-gallon to a 3-gallon to a 5 to a 10 to a 15-gallon tree, whatever the size is. And you'll know when you remove the tree out of this pot, the roots are just growing around and around and around in these circles, just like that. And this is really bad for the tree because what happens if it stays like this in the ground, well, one, the roots are never going to spread out. It's never going to get anchored. Wind is going to blow. Tree's just going to tip right over. Two, this can cause what's known as girdling, which is essentially the roots wrap around the tree and it strangles itself to death. You definitely don't want that happening. So what we're going to do is loosen up these roots. So at this point, you'll need your hand cultivator. It's best to get on the ground level with the tree. And it's important to do this as close to your hole as possible. It's just going to make backfilling and cleanup a lot easier versus if you're doing this 6 feet away and then you got to rake all that dirt back over. So here's a close-up for you of the roots. Notice how they're all growing in the same direction. That's just a result of growing in a pot for years and years. So this is the before, and here's the after. This is what we want, nice and loose so that the roots can spread out rather than just growing inwards on themselves. So our goal is to turn everything into this. Now, if you've got multiple people planting with you, it's even better to have one person digging or 2 people digging while one other person works on the root ball. And that'll just prevent you from digging a hole that's too deep and then you have to backfill. Okay, so I've just finished up loosening up my root ball. As you can see, the roots now can spread out wide and stabilize the tree like this. And you'll also notice I lost a lot of volume here. And that's really why, if you've got multiple people digging with you, you want to have someone working the root ball at the same time as you're digging, because you're going to know if it's the correct depth hole by this root flare. You want this root flare right here, that first root that juts out from the trunk. You want that to be level with the ground. All right, so I've got my cereal bowl shaped hole. The tree is at the proper depth because I tested with the shovel test. And the root flare is level with the ground. Now we can begin backfilling. So make sure it's centered in there. Recheck the level. You're going to hold it up right. This is where the empty buckets come into play. Look how easy that is to just dump it in there. And you want to tuck the tree in. You want to get rid of these air pockets in between the roots. Because what happens, you got an air pocket underground, it's damp. You can encourage root rot and attract pests, cause a whole host of problems. It's going to be really bad for the roots. So I'm tucking it in kind of with my hands like knives or blades. It's because I want to fill the air pockets, but I don't want to compact it like this because then moisture and oxygen won't be able to reach the roots at all. If you have someone with you, this is a good time while you're backfilling and tucking. This is a good time to make sure that the tree is actually upright. You want to check from a 12 o'clock and 3 o'clock or 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock angle. So before I get too far, let me check on that. Now you're going to get to a point when you're backfilling where you're back level to the ground, but you've got heaps of leftover soil. You got soil left over in your bucket, and you're wondering what you're going to do with it. Well, you're going to build a berm, which is just a donut-shaped ring or wall around the tree. We're going to do this to create a little retention pond so that when you water or that when it rains, that water is captured and goes straight down to the roots where it needs to go versus just running off the hill, running into the street, into the sidewalk. And remember when I said everything that comes out of the ground is going to be reused in some way? All those roots I encountered while I was digging, that's all going to become reinforcement for this berm. You want this baby to be strong. I'm going to get it really compact because this has to be able to hold 10 gallons of water for at least a year. See how I'm compacting the berm, but not the soil around the roots. Again, you don't want to, punch down on this, slap down on the soil directly around the roots, because again, you're just going to create a hard pan, and then no water is going to be able to reach the roots. Now, typically, if you're planting on a flat surface, you want to create an entire donut all the way around. But since I'm on a slope, I'm going to have a little gap on this back side so that when it rains, water rushes down and it gets trapped inside. That means because I have this gap right here, I really need to build up that downhill side. Now I'm going to use all this substrate that came with the tree in the pot. All that's going to get used too. Throw it on that berm. Only a few more steps left. I'm going to mulch. So I'm going to set this mulch down around the tree. I'm going to maintain that donut shape to the berm. You might see people do that. I call this a volcano. Whether it's soil or whether it's mulch, you don't want a volcano, because what happens? Tree thinks it's underground, starts sending out roots out here. The wind comes by, the rain comes by, washes that mulch, washes that soil away. Now these roots are exposed. It's bad for the tree. So when you're building that berm, when you're setting that mulch out, make sure you're maintaining a nice wide base around the trunk. Keep that root flare exposed. That's one of our 15-gallon buckets. Here's the second. And the reason we're mulching in the first place is several-fold, actually. It provides a buffer from lawnmowers and weed eaters. It insulates the roots during the summer or the winter so that they're not freezing or baking. And it also is a form of weed suppression. There you go. We've planted our tree. You want to check to make sure it's still straight from both angles. Final tuck. Make sure it's in there nice and strong. You'll make sure, when the wind blows, it's not just going to blow over tomorrow morning. And now we're ready to water. And then that's the last step. So I'm going to go fill up some water buckets and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my 2 5-gallon buckets of water filled. I'm going to water this tree in. This is important for a couple reasons. One, we just loosen up that root ball, right? So the roots are they're exposed to air, so they're prone to drying out at this time. 2, water helps the soil settle around the roots after you've planted it. So it helps get rid of those air pockets, things like that. And then lastly, it's just always really good whenever you transplant any plant, whether it's a tree or lettuce or what have you. You always want to water it in really well to help those roots get that first spurt of growth. So as I water, I'm just going to do a nice steady pour. Nothing crazy. This is a great time to test your berm. If you start seeing water running out the bottom, you know you need to rebuild your berm. It's not going to hold up over time. All right, I'm going to let it settle down. I don't see any leakage. I think we're good to go. I'm going to pour that second bucket in. There we go. We planted our tree. I think it looks great. You're ready to go out there and conquer the world.